I'm Jordan Ramirez, 26, female. I live in a small, cozy apartment in the city with my husband, Michael. By day, I produce a true crime podcast, spending my hours scripting stories of betrayal and deceit. I never imagined I would be living through one of my own. It all started with a simple cup of coffee, a daily ritual that turned into the first clue of a devastating conspiracy. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The sun was just beginning to filter through our bedroom blinds, casting long, lazy stripes across the hardwood floor. Michael was already up, a habit he'd developed since his recent promotion to marketing manager. I could hear him humming in the kitchen, the familiar sounds of the coffee grinder whirring to life. It was our routine. He'd make the coffee, I'd make the toast, and we'd have a quick breakfast together before diving into our respective workdays. "Morning, sleepyhead," he said, smiling as I walked into the kitchen. He handed me a large ceramic mug, steam curling gracefully from the dark liquid. "Your usual, black, 2 sugars. Thanks, babe," I mumbled, still shaking off the last remnants of sleep. I took the mug and brought it to my nose, ready for that first invigorating whiff of freshly brewed coffee. But something was wrong. Instead of the rich, earthy aroma I loved, there was a faint, almost imperceptible chemical smell. It was sharp and slightly metallic, like cleaning fluid or something vaguely medicinal. I frowned. "Did you try a new coffee bean?" I asked, swirling the liquid in the mug. Michael, who was now busy buttering a piece of toast, didn't look up. "Nope, same old brand. Why? It smells a little off," I said, hesitating. I didn't want to sound ungrateful. He had, after all, made the coffee. He finally looked at me, his expression a mixture of confusion and mild annoyance. "Off how? It smells fine to me." He picked up his own mug from the counter and took a long, deliberate sniff. "See, perfectly normal. Maybe your senses are just out of whack this morning." I tried to dismiss it. Maybe he was right. I'd been working late nights on a particularly gruesome podcast series, and my sleep schedule was a mess. It was entirely possible I was imagining things. I raised the mug to my lips, but the strange, acrid scent hit me again, stronger this time. My instinct screamed at me not to drink it. Every fiber of my being felt a primal sense of warning, a gut feeling so strong it was impossible to ignore. "You know what?" I said, setting the mug down on the counter with a soft clink. "I think I'll just have some tea this morning. My stomach feels a bit funny." Michael's eyes narrowed for a fraction of a second. A flicker of an emotion I couldn't quite place. Was it frustration, disappointment? It was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by his usual charming smile. "Suit yourself," he said, shrugging. "More for me, then." He picked up his toast and his own mug and headed to the small dining table. I watched him go, an uneasy feeling settling in the pit of my stomach. He didn't offer to make me tea. He didn't ask if I was feeling okay. He just accepted it. It was a small thing, a tiny deviation from our normal morning dance, but it felt significant. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the mug he had so graciously prepared for me. The steam had stopped rising, but the unsettling smell lingered. Something was very, very wrong, and I had a chilling premonition that this cup of coffee was just the beginning. The following morning, the scenario repeated itself, but with a slight variation. Michael once again presented me with my morning coffee. This time I was more alert, my senses on high priority. I took the mug, smiled my thanks, and subtly brought it to my nose as I turned to get the milk from the fridge. There it was again. That same bizarre chemical odor, masked slightly by the coffee's aroma, but definitely present. My mind raced. Was I being paranoid? Was this all in my head? I decided to test my theory. "Oh, shoot, I forgot to ask." I said, feigning a sudden realization. "Could you add a splash of that vanilla syrup for me? It's on the top shelf." Michael sighed, a theatrical display of being put upon. "Really, you know I don't like that sweet stuff. Please, just for today," I pleaded, putting on my best puppy. Dog eyes. He grumbled but complied, turning his back to me to reach for the syrup. In that split second, I acted. With swift, silent movements, I switched our mugs. His was on the counter right next to mine. They were identical, a matching set we'd received as a wedding gift. He wouldn't notice. He poured the vanilla syrup into what he thought was my mug, but was now his, and pushed it across the counter toward me without a second glance. "Here you go," he said, his tone clipped. "Thank you." I chirped, my heart hammering against my ribs. I took a small, hesitant sip from my own original mug, which I now held. It tasted perfectly normal, rich, slightly bitter, exactly how it should. I watched Michael out of the corner of my eye as he picked up the doctored mug and took a large gulp. He winced. "Ugh, way too sweet." I don't know how you drink this stuff." He shuddered dramatically and placed the mug back on the counter, abandoning it. I felt a wave of relief so intense it almost made me dizzy. So, it wasn't the coffee itself. It was something he was adding specifically to my cup. The question was, what was it, and why? My mind, trained by years of dissecting criminal motives for my podcast, immediately went to the darkest places. Was he trying to make me sick? Was he trying to poison me? The thought was so monstrous, so outlandish, that I almost dismissed it. This was Michael, my husband of 3 years, the man I loved. He wouldn't do something so sinister. Or would he? Over the next few days, I became a silent observer in my own home. I watched his every move, analyzed his every word. I found excuses not to drink the coffee he made. I'm running late, I'd say, grabbing a granola bar and rushing out the door. Or I'm trying to cut back on caffeine. He never seemed overly concerned, merely shrugging it off, but I could see that flicker of annoyance in his eyes again, that subtle tightening of his jaw. He wanted me to drink the coffee. He was becoming impatient. The suspicion was a cold, heavy stone in my gut. I started noticing other things, too. He was more secretive with his phone, angling it away from me whenever a text came through. He started working late more often, coming home smelling faintly of a perfume that wasn't mine. The signs were all there, cliché as I had scripted for my podcast a dozen times, but this wasn't a script. This was my life. The pieces were starting to form a picture I didn't want to see, a portrait of a man I didn't recognize. The strange smell in my coffee wasn't just an oddity, it was a warning sign, a siren blaring in the fog of my denial. The perfect opportunity to confirm my terrifying suspicions arrived on a Saturday morning. Michael's sister, Sophia, was coming over for brunch. Sophia was a character. A 25-year-old aspiring social media influencer, she lived her life through a phone screen, documenting every mimosa and avocado toast for her followers. She and I had never been close. I found her superficial, and I sensed she saw me as boring and unambitious. That morning, as Michael prepared the coffee, I watched him like a hawk from the living room, pretending to be engrossed in a book. I saw him pour 2 cups, then turn his back to the counter for a moment. He fumbled with something in his pocket, a small vial or dropper bottle. It was too quick for me to see clearly, and discreetly add a few drops to one of the mugs. My blood ran cold. It was real. He was actually doing it. Just then, the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," I called out, jumping up. I opened the door to Sophia, who breezed in, phone already in hand, filming. "Hey, Insta fam, Saturday brunch with the fam. Say hi, Jordan." "Hi, Sophia," I said, forcing a smile. She sauntered into the kitchen, kissing Michael. Smells good in here. Is that coffee for me?" she asked, pointing at the 2 mugs on the counter. "The one on the right is yours, Jordy," Michael said, turning to put the bagels in the toaster. "Sophia, do you want one?" This was my chance. "Oh, Sophia, you take this one," I said brightly, pushing the doctored mug. The one Michael had intended for me towards her. "I haven't touched it. I know you like your coffee black, and I was just about to add cream to mine." I gestured to the other untouched mug. Sophia, too busy framing the perfect shot of the coffee mug for her Instagram story, didn't hesitate. "Oh, sweet thanks, sis," she said, grabbing the cup. She took a large sip. I held my breath, watching for her reaction. She didn't spit it out. She didn't even make a face. She just swallowed and smiled at her phone. Coffee first. She captioned her video. My stomach dropped. If the substance was tasteless and odorless enough for her not to notice, what was it? How long had I been ingesting it before I first detected that faint chemical smell? We sat down for brunch, and I watched Sophia like a detective observing a prime suspect. For the first 20 minutes, she seemed fine, chattering on about her brand collaborations and the drama with another influencer. But then, a subtle shift occurred. A fine sheen of sweat appeared on her forehead. She started fanning herself with her hand, complaining about the heat in the apartment. "Are you okay, Sophia?" I asked, my voice laced with false concern. "You look a little flushed." Michael shot me a sharp, angry look. "She's fine. It's just warm in here." But she wasn't fine. A few minutes later, she abruptly stood up, her face pale and clammy. I don't feel so good," she mumbled, pressing a hand to her stomach. She swayed on her feet before rushing towards the bathroom, where we heard the distinct sound of her being violently ill. Michael leaped up from his chair, his face a mask of panic. He ran to the bathroom door, knocking frantically. "Soph, are you okay? What's wrong?" I remained seated at the table, a cold, calm certainty washing over me. I looked at the now empty mug Sophia had drunk from. I had my proof. It wasn't just in my head. My husband, the man I had promised to love and cherish, was trying to poison me, and his own sister had just become my unwitting star witness. Sophia's sudden illness lasted for the rest of the day. Michael insisted on taking her to an urgent care clinic, where the doctor diagnosed her with a severe case of food poisoning, likely from something she'd eaten the day before. Michael seemed relieved by the diagnosis, a little too relieved. He used it as an opportunity to chide me. "See, I told you it was nothing, you and your crazy imagination." But I knew better. As soon as they were gone, I sprang into action. I went straight to the kitchen. The mug Michael had made for me that morning, the one I had cleverly avoided, was still sitting on the counter. I carefully poured a small amount of the coffee into a clean, empty water bottle, sealed it tightly, and labeled it with the date. This was my evidence. I immediately called my best friend, Emily. We'd known each other since college, and she was one of the most brilliant people I knew. More importantly, she was a research scientist at a pharmaceutical lab, with access to equipment far beyond my reach. I have a huge and possibly insane favor to ask," I said, my voice trembling slightly. I met her at a coffee shop far from my neighborhood, the irony not lost on me. I explained everything, the strange smell, the swapped mugs, Sophia's sudden sickness. To my immense relief, Emily didn't think I was crazy. She listened intently, her expression growing more serious with every word. She had always been wary of Michael, finding his charm too polished, too practiced. "And you think he's putting something in your coffee?" she asked, her voice low. I nodded, pushing the labeled water bottle across the table. "I need to know what's in here. Can you test it?" Emily looked at the bottle, her scientist's curiosity piqued. "This is highly unorthodox, Jordan, and probably against a dozen company policies, but for you, yes, I'll do it. Just give me a couple of days. The next 48 hours were the longest of my life." I lived in a state of hyper-vigilance, going through the motions of my life while a storm of fear and anger raged inside me. I made my own coffee, ate food I prepared myself, and barely spoke to Michael, blaming my silence on a looming work deadline. He seemed content to leave me alone, which only deepened my suspicion. Finally, Emily called, "Meet me at our usual spot, now." Her tone was urgent, and my heart pounded as I drove to the park where we often walked. She was waiting for me on a bench, a grim look on her face. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. I ran the sample through a full spectrum analysis, she said, handing me a printout filled with complex chemical charts. "It took some digging, but I found it. It's a compound called olundrin." Olundrin. I repeated, the name foreign to me. "It's a cardiac glycoside," Emily explained, her voice grave. "Extracted from the oleander plant, it's incredibly toxic. In small, repeated doses, it causes symptoms that mimic a stomach flu or food poisoning. Nausea, vomiting, cramping, dizziness over time. It builds up in the system. It can lead to serious heart problems, arrhythmia, cardiac arrest." The world tilted on its axis. He wasn't just trying to make me sick. He was slowly, methodically trying to kill me in a way that would be almost impossible to trace, a way that would look like a sudden, tragic health crisis. "But why?" I whispered, the words catching in my throat. Emily placed a comforting hand on my arm. I did a little digging of my own. "Michael took out a very substantial life insurance policy on you 6 months ago, Jordan, to the tune of $2 million. The final, poisonous piece of the puzzle clicked into place. It wasn't just about cheating, though I was now certain Sophia was more than just his sister. It was about money. My life was worth $2 million to him. The betrayal was so profound, so monstrous, it felt unreal, but the lab report in my hands was undeniable proof. The anger that had been simmering inside me for weeks finally erupted, burning away the fear and the sadness. He had mistaken my kindness for weakness. He had underestimated me, and he was about to find out just how badly he had miscalculated. My grief was quickly replaced by a cold, calculated rage. I wasn't just going to leave him. I wasn't just going to call the police. That felt too simple, too clean. He had tried to erase me quietly, to turn me into a tragic story and a fat paycheck. I decided he deserved a much more public downfall. My job as a podcast producer had taught me one thing: a well-crafted narrative is the most powerful weapon in the world. I was going to write an ending he would never forget. My plan began to take shape. I knew Michael and Sophia were having an affair. His late nights, the lingering perfume, their shared, secret glances. It was all obvious now. The poison was likely her idea, a way to get me out of the picture permanently, so they could have my money and my life. They were a team, so I would take them down as a team. I started by playing the part of the dutiful, slightly unwell wife. I complained of fatigue and dizziness, the very symptoms his poison was supposed to be causing. I allowed him to see me taking antacids and rubbing my temples. His concern was sickeningly fake. "Maybe you should see a doctor, honey," he'd say, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. "You're probably right," I'd reply weakly. "I just feel so drained lately." Meanwhile, I was gathering my arsenal. With Emily's help, I got a full medical workup, documenting that I was in perfect health. No pre-existing conditions that could explain a sudden cardiac event. Emily also helped me procure a high-quality, undetectable audio recording device. The centerpiece of my plan was Michael's parents' 30th wedding anniversary party. It was a huge event, with all their friends and family attending. Michael was set to give a toast, a speech about love, commitment, and family values. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. It was the perfect stage. The day before the party, I put my plan into motion. I told Michael I was feeling particularly unwell and asked if he could make me some of his special soothing tea that he sometimes made when I was sick. I watched via a tiny camera I'd hidden in the kitchen as he brewed the tea and added the familiar drops from the small vial. I took the cup from him, and as soon as he was out of sight, I poured the contents into another labeled container, a second piece of crucial evidence. Then I confronted him. I sat him down that evening, my voice recorder tucked into my pocket. "I played the part of a heartbroken wife. Michael, I know about you and Sophia," I said, tears, real ones this time, welling in my eyes. He initially denied it, of course. But I was relentless, presenting small, irrefutable pieces of evidence. A credit card charge for a hotel room, a text I'd accidentally seen. Finally, he broke, not with remorse, but with arrogance. "Fine," he spat. "It's true. What were you going to do? Sophia gives me what I need. You've become so boring, so focused on your little podcast." I kept my composure, pushing him further. "And the insurance policy, Michael, the $2 million. His face went pale. "What are you talking about? I know what you've been putting in my coffee," I said, my voice barely a whisper. The mask of civility dropped completely. He lunged at me, grabbing my arms. "You don't know anything," he snarled, his face inches from mine. "You're delusional. You're sick. Everyone can see it. Are they going to see it tomorrow night?" I asked, my voice suddenly clear and strong. "When I play this conversation for your entire family. Checkmate." The fear in his eyes was my victory. He backed away, stunned into silence. I had him, and he knew it. The stage was set, the audience was waiting, and I was ready for my grand finale. The anniversary party was in full swing. The backyard of Michael's parents' home was elegantly decorated, filled with laughter, music, and the clinking of champagne glasses. I moved through the crowd like a ghost, my face a carefully constructed mask of pleasant neutrality. Michael and Sophia stuck together, constantly shooting me nervous, hateful glances. They had no idea what was coming, but they could feel the storm brewing. When the time came for the toasts, Michael's father gave a heartwarming speech, followed by other family members. Finally, it was Michael's turn. He walked to the small, makeshift stage, microphone in hand. He looked pale under the string lights. He cleared his throat and began his speech, the words dripping with manufactured sentiment. 30 years, it's an inspiration to find a love like my parents have. It's what we all strive for. It's about trust, honesty, and cherishing your partner above all else. As he spoke, I discreetly connected my phone to the venue's large Bluetooth speaker system. He continued, "And I'm so lucky to have found that with my wife, Jordan." He gestured towards me, all eyes turned to me. I gave a small, tight-lipped smile. "She's my rock, my everything, and though she hasn't been feeling well lately, she is the strongest person I know." It was the perfect cue. "Speaking of my health, Michael," I said, my voice cutting through the quiet applause. I walked towards the stage, taking the spare microphone. "I think this is the perfect time to share with everyone what's really been going on." A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. Michael's face was ashen. "Jordan, what are you doing?" he hissed. "Just providing some context." I said sweetly. I turned to the audience. "You see, my husband has been so concerned about my health. He's been giving me a special supplement in my morning coffee to help me feel better." I paused, letting the statement hang in the air. "The only problem is, the supplement is a heart toxin called Olendrin. He's been slowly poisoning me for months." Gasps of horror erupted from the guests. Michael's mother looked like she was going to faint. "She's lying." Michael shouted into his mic. "She's sick. She's delusional." "Am I?" I asked calmly. Then I pressed play on my phone. Our conversation from the night before blasted through the speakers, every word crystal clear. Michael's arrogant confession about his affair with Sophia, his panicked denial of the poison, his snarled threat that I was sick and delusional. The crowd stood in stunned silence, their faces a mixture of shock and disgust. When the recording ended, a deathly silence hung over the yard. I then held up the two sealed containers, the coffee and the tea. "This is the coffee from this morning and the tea from last night," I announced. "Both laced with poison. I've already had a previous sample tested, and I've already spoken with the police. They were very interested in Michael's $2 million life insurance policy on me." Sophia began to sob uncontrollably. Michael stood frozen, his face a grotesque mask of terror. His perfect life, his perfect image, had been shattered in a matter of minutes in front of everyone he cared about. He had wanted to tell a story about a loving husband and a tragic wife. I had just given everyone the true crime version instead. The final scene was not a quiet hospital room, but a public stage of his own making, where his treachery was the headline act. The aftermath was exactly as chaotic and satisfying as I had hoped. The police, whom I had arranged to have waiting just down the street, arrived within minutes. The partygoers became witnesses. Michael and Sophia were taken away in separate cars, their faces streaked with tears of self-pity, not remorse. The story of the anniversary party where the golden boy was exposed as a would-be murderer became a local legend. The legal battle was draining, but I was armed with irrefutable evidence. The lab reports, the audio recording, and Emily's expert testimony were more than enough. The most damning evidence, however, came from Sophia. Faced with a long prison sentence, she turned on Michael, confessing everything in exchange for a plea deal. She admitted the affair and confirmed that the idea to poison me was his, born of greed and impatience. He wanted my inheritance and the insurance money to fund their lavish influencer lifestyle. Michael was sentenced to 25 years in prison for attempted murder. Sophia received a lesser sentence as an accomplice. His family, once my own, was shattered. They sent me a single tear-stained letter of apology, which I read and then threw away. Their sorrow was for the son they thought they knew, not for the daughter-in-law he tried to kill. As for me, I started over. I sold the apartment, purging my life of every object and memory associated with him. I moved to a new city, a place where no one knew my story. I poured all my pain, anger, and resilience into my work. I launched a new podcast series called Survivor's Story, where I and others shared our experiences of betrayal and the long, difficult road to recovery. It became an unexpected success, resonating with thousands of people who had their own stories of surviving the unimaginable. There are still days when the memory of that chemical smell makes my stomach churn. The trust I once gave so freely is now a guarded commodity, but I am not broken. The man who tried to silence me only gave me a more powerful voice. The plot he wrote to end my life became the prologue to my new one. Every morning I make my own coffee. It's a simple ritual, but it's mine. It tastes of strength, of survival, and of a future that I, and I alone, get to write.